Hi, this is Emily Salguero, editor-in-chief of The Echo, Cal Lutheran student newspaper. A town hall meeting was held for Cal Lutheran faculty and staff on Tuesday, November 2nd to discuss enrollment rates, the university's new diversity, equity, and inclusion structure, and to inform everyone on general campus updates. Our reporter, Taylor Love, had the opportunity to sit down and speak with President Lori Varlotta, Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Success Matthew Ward, and Vice President for Administration and Finance Karen Davis to get some insight on the subjects discussed at the meeting and what information covered is important for the rest of the Cal Lutheran community to know.
So my name is Taylor Love. I am a junior. My major is communications with an emphasis in journalism, and I currently am a reporter for The Echo.
Thank you, Taylor. Can you give us a brief overview of some of the topics discussed at the town hall?
Yeah, so the main thing that was talked about on the town hall was their strategic and master planning. That was the focus that Varlotta, president of the school, talked about for most of the interview. And the strategic and master planning, which I'm sure we'll get more detailed into later, was about the plans that they had for the school as far as utilizing their natural environment as well as their man-made environment. So the parks as well as the buildings. And then it also focused on fostering a student experience, as they said. And then there was a focus on the faculty and staff environment. And those were the three main things that they said that the strategic and master planning will be focused on. And there was also topic of conversation about the enrollment numbers for the school in the past years, as well as this year, with things such as COVID affecting the numbers and how we're kind of bouncing back from all of that. The same thing was talked about as far as finances and budget, as well as bouncing back from COVID, how we were doing going into the pandemic, stuff as that nature. There was a brief conversation about the DEI structure on campus. Not a whole lot of detail went into that part of it. Then there was a little bit of a discussion about the mental health services that are available on campus to staff and faculty, and students. And lastly, one of the main things that was talked about was a potential town hall meeting that would encourage students to voice their opinions and their topics that they think need to be discussed that should come up in the future.
Thank you. And can you talk a little bit more about this strategic planning aspect and what that entails?
Yeah, so basically the school has hired this consulting companies to come into the school and take a look at everything and see what it is that we kind of need help on, for lack of better words. And so basically, strategic planning. The company is called Credo, Credo, and they come in and they take a look at the school. So they come in and they take a look at the school and they basically see what aspects of the school are being well utilized and what new things can be implemented to make the school a better environment overall. So the three main themes that they said that they were going to focus on were going to be the student experience, the faculty and staff environment, and the regional impact. That was what the third one was. So the student experience is basically they'll come in and they'll see how to make the school better overall for students and the best ways to go about fostering a better experience for the students. What they didn't go into details so much as about what that necessarily entails, but that was what they were talking about, just utilizing our environment, natural environment, as well as our buildings and our structures, res halls, stuff of that nature. Then for the faculty and staff environment, they discussed a lot about the mental health services that are applied for faculty on campus. They also did not over the top go into detail about this either, about what the strategic and master plan necessarily entails as far as improving that faculty and staff environment. They just focused on the mental health, which could have been for a number of reasons. One, they haven't had the chance to sit down and come up with a full strategic plan that they said that they will then present to the board of the school, who will approve it or send it back with their own personal notes about what they think needs to be changed and what they think can stay. And then their goal is to get that sent in by May. And if not by May, then by August. So I think that it's in the early planning stages. Therefore, they don't have a full set list of everything that they want the strategic plan to kind of cater to. They did talk about the regional impact, about how the school is collaborating with nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, businesses, agencies, things of that nature. So how it's affecting how Cal Lutheran is affecting the community around it. Again, not a whole lot of detail was discussed about that. They're, again, probably in the early planning stages, I would assume, so they haven't had the opportunity to really decide what it is that's going to be implemented. But I assume that that'll come out in May to August. They did say that they want to have a conversation with the students, and then that will also contribute into their master plan.
Thank you. And I wanted to ask a little bit, leading into staff attrition rates, what are those looking like right now?
So the staff attrition rates at the school are interesting. One thing that was very interesting to note that they did feel like they needed to make known to us was the number of faculty of color at the school. So currently, 32% of the staff of Cal Lutheran are of color, which, according to Varlata, from sources that she has spoken to, is a respectable number for faculty of color at an institution. So that's where we're at. So that's the faculty. 46% of the staff in general, so faculty as well as other people on campus, are of color. That was one thing that they wanted to point out. What they're facing right now is, so all schools are facing the same issue. It's a 22% to 32% attrition rate from something called the Great Resignation, as they referred to it, which basically just means that a lot of people are quitting their jobs right now. So they said that all schools are in a 22 to 32, all schools within the conference that she has spoken to, let me clarify that. All schools within the conference that she has spoken to are in the 22% to 32% range. Right now, we are at 23 to 24%. So they're taking it very seriously. They're looking at the data that they have collected, and they're seeing why it is people are leaving the school. One thing that they focused on was that there is a higher number of faculty of color that are leaving within the first 3 years in comparison to their white counterpart. But in an interesting note, if the faculty of color stays past that 3-year mark, they are more likely to stay for longer periods of time than their white counterpart. So that was something that they focused on. They said that they don't know why it is that these faculty of color are leaving so much more rapidly in the first 3 years, but they said that it's something that they want to get to the bottom of and something that they want to figure out so that they can hopefully fix it for the future.
Thank you. And shifting gears a little bit, can you talk a little bit more about the enrollment rate and what they look like compared to previous years?
Yeah, so because of COVID, our enrollment was down for a very long time. I came in the class of 2019-2020, and so in my starting class, there was 600, let me find the exact number in here. Okay, so for my academic year of the 2019-2020 school year, there was an enrollment of 637 students, whereas for the 2020-2021 school year, that enrollment dropped down to 492. And these numbers are coming from Vice President of Enrollment, Dr. Matthew Ward. So those were the numbers that he said that he was looking at. He said that the pandemic had impacted it pretty dramatically, as a direct quote. He did say that there were other factors that did contribute to it. One thing that we are struggling in is international students because of border closures, because of the pandemic, as well as the U.S. not being perceived as a desirable place to live given the previous incumbent of the White House. So he said that those are all things that are contributing to it. He did say, however, that previously the early action deadline for the school had closed, and that's kind of their first indication of what the following school year is going to look like, and that he was optimistic based off of the early action numbers that the enrollment for the school for this next upcoming school year, so the 22 to 23 school year, is going to be north of 600 students. So it's going to be almost back to where it was for my freshman year, which was one of the highest enrollment years that the school has had in a very long time. Right now, the overall number of students at this school, he said from the 2019 class, so it was roughly 4,300 students. So recruitment is down, international students are down. Basically everything is down. They've started to invite people back. So there's about 800 students that had left for whatever reason they needed to have left. Should have been they transferred to a school, whether they were from a different state and they transferred to a school in their state, they decided to drop out, they took a hiatus, whatever the reason may be. They have started to invite those students back to come back to Cal Lutheran as a way of recruitment, and that's roughly about 800 people. So currently the school is at 3,800 students. So that's a lot lower than what it usually is. So that's what enrollment is looking like. It's down, according to Dr. Ward.
Thank you. And as of revenue, what is that looking like now? And have there been any major cuts?
So the conversation about finances was interesting. They said that the biggest hit that we've taken was to housing. Because of the pandemic, not everybody was living on campus. They were all off campus, home, Zoom, whatever the reason may be. So it was residential housing and meal plans was where we had took the biggest hit, but they stated several times, and it felt like they wanted to make it very clear that we were in a very good financial standing, and that's important for people to know that. Whereas, yes, we did lose a lot of money. We went from having about $117 million down to 101. We have not had to dip into our reserves, so we are doing okay financially. We did receive federal aid from the government, in a relief packet, that they haven't really had to touch that all that much. So that's what we were told. They didn't talk about what was cut. I mean, the most that they said that they talked about what was cut, a lot of the things that were cut impacted faculty more than they impacted the students. So they said that they sacrificed the faculty going to meetings and conferences in favor of the athletes being able to travel. That was a point that they had made that I want to note. But overall, they said that we were very financially stable, that things were looking good, and that they were optimistic that we were going to come out of this completely fine.
Thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, thank you.
Here's what else you need to know about this week. The Kingsmen and Regal basketball teams are officially starting their 2021-2022 season. The men's basketball team head coach, Russell White, said their focus is all on this upcoming season, and there are no expectations set besides winning their games. Our reporter, Leslie Mendez, has more on this story. Cal Lutheran Junior Naomi Mbize created her own business during the pandemic called Nami Fabrics, which incorporates the use of African prints in her clothing. Our reporter, Caroline Asen, has more on the story. All stories discussed in this episode can be found online at cluecho.com. Thank you for listening.